Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and today is the 1st of March, 2025. We are now out of February, and we are about to move into an action-packed month, astrologically at any rate. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where everything is headed this morning, what's really headed this month, starting with this morning, right? Today is a day as I'm waiting, I see there's a couple people on, as I'm waiting for people to kind of come on. We are doing the dream workshop today at 11. I think there's a total of 4 people in that right now, which is fine. I don't necessarily need a huge group to to do that. And Alex is on. Good morning. Good to see you. And yeah, we are doing the we're doing that today. And Alistair is on. Good morning, Alistair. So yeah, I'm going to see who pops in here. Those of you who, I don't know if anybody was able to actually see the planetary, it's not really, I guess people are calling it an alignment. Basically what you have is a whole bunch of planets, just about all of them, visible in one part of the sky. So it's not like some are in the southern hemisphere, some are in the northern. They're all kind of like in one spot, and none of them are in opposition to each other. So they're all kind of in the same place, which is very unusual kind of energy. That's an energy that's actually would be considered quite harmonious. The only thing I think they said was problematic was that Jupiter, and Leela is on. Good morning, Leela. Is that it was saying that the only thing that I think they said was problematic was that Jupiter was making a kind of a square to the sun, possibly to the moon too. I can't quite remember, but that was the only thing, and it was like a 2-degree square. It wasn't a major thing, but I had some interesting messages this morning. I had a lot of thoughts last night. Weirdly, my dreams, a lot of them have been about, what's funny, we're talking about the topic of masculine-feminine integration. And by the way, anybody who's looking to join the school this term, we still have plenty of seats for people who want to join in the ISFM this term. I know Joanne is in this semester, and I know Alex had been in a previous semester, so she might not end up doing that again. But yeah, people who might be interested in it, even if there's people who are interested in just taking individual courses, or in just auditing individual sections, that will be starting in a couple of weeks, actually. So I really have to get on promoting that, because there's just so many things going on right now. It's mind-boggling. And I don't know, energetically, I know this past week with Mars going direct, it was supposed to be like more energized time, but I've just found, and I find other people are saying the same thing. People are just exhausted. Manana, hey, hello, Joanne. I was just mentioning you, because you're going to be in the school this semester. So yeah, I was having a lot of dreams about, like men turning into women and women turning into men. It was kind of weird. It was like I saw it more as like a masculine feminine type integration thing. That's why I bring up the school, because that's our theme this term, is about how do we integrate the masculine and feminine. Okay. And so we'll see what that, I don't know. That's an interesting that I feel that's happening. And oh, hello, Denise. So yeah, we will see. I don't know, that found that to be rather interesting. Also today with basically, I think Neptune is aspecting Venus in Pisces, and Venus goes retrograde. Venus is in Aries right now, sorry. Venus is going retrograde, but that aspect to Neptune can make things kind of, I don't know, it's becoming very difficult to see what's real and what's not real. And that kind of leads to a message that I got this morning. I have a topic in my mind for today that kind of came up in my mind last night. But I did want to mention some of the astrological things. We've got Venus going retrograde today. We've got Mercury going retrograde in 2 weeks. However, we are at the beginning of Mercury pre-shadow. So I always recommend to people, if you can get a bottle of this stuff, my label's a little messed up. It's called Van oil. For Mercury retrograde, that's a really good thing. You just kind of put it on certain chakra points. I usually put it on the crown, the third eye, the throat, heart, and usually my sacrum, because that's where my inner authority is. So yeah, just because what it does is it helps you, when things are muddled, it helps you distinguish truth from fiction. I find that it does. It was a friend of mine who recommended that I do this. And so I have been doing it, and I find that, yeah, actually it doesn't, it doesn't stop the effects of Mercury retrograde, but what it does do is it helps things become a little more, I just find that it's clearer to me, like if somebody's giving me a line of BS, like it's clearer to me that that's what's going on. Whereas in a normal situation, it might not be clear to you. So I don't know. I do find it interesting, and I do find it helpful. And I'm not sure, I'm not going to be able to tell you here what the properties are that make it good for Mercury retrograde, but there's probably something in it that is something of a remediation kind of thing, okay, in terms of that. So I also woke up this morning, and there's this creature that I see occasionally outside. My first thought is always that it's a fox. But then when I look at the head looks more like an otter. It's a weird looking thing. And it was kind of sitting right in the front of my neighbor's property here this morning. And then it was just kind of like wandering around. And then I see it wandering around in the graveyard. And I never considered the appearance of this thing to be a very great omen. And again, I didn't know what it was. I didn't, it wasn't like I could take the phone and really, and good morning, Kathleen. I don't know if I was going to, I have this, it just, when it shows up, I'm always like, I feel like it shows up at times when it's a little harbinger of things that could be challenging. Let's put it that way. When I've seen it, I still don't know what it is. And I have seen it in the daylight too. And it's kind of got like a weird, it's kind of some red, some silver, so that's why I first thought it was maybe a fox. But then I looked at I was like, no, that's not the face of a fox. And it limps a lot. A Fisher cat is what Joanne's saying. Maybe. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm going to look that up. I'm not aware of them being around here, but that does sound okay. That now that you're saying it, from what I recall of the image of that, you could be right. I mean, that might be exactly what it is. So thank you for that. I'm going to take a look at that actually afterwards, and maybe what the meanings are behind it, because whenever it shows up, this one kind of limps through, and it's always kind of hanging out in the graveyard. So I don't know. It's but whenever it rarely shows up, but when it does, I'm kind of like, something's up. So, okay. So I had my Azrael discussion this morning. A Jersey Devil, Kathleen saying, a little too small for that, I think. Jersey Devil's pretty big dude, and picks people up and carries them off apparently. But I don't live in South Jersey, so I haven't. I'm not hang out in the Pine Barrens, which are kind of scary. Does it have a boof tail? Yes, it does have a boof tail. Yeah. I like the idea. I like that word boof. I always call it floof, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, so it's right, because I know foxes can have kind of fluffy tails, but this is kind of different. It's more uniformly fluffy rather than kind of starting and then getting fluffy. So yeah, so Joanne says, yeah, they're elusive. Okay, well, that's interesting. It's interesting to see them around here. It was like the first time I heard, what was it? There was it was like a screech owl, which we associate with Lilith, which is kind of funny. I have heard screech owls outside too, but not, again, very rare, like maybe once every couple of years. I don't know. It's very rare. So anyway, when I was talking to Azrael this morning, doing my, that sounds funny, talking to Azrael this morning, but I was doing my my morning meditations, and I connect with my guides. And of course, Azrael's one of my guides, as is Morrigan. They both connected with me this morning. And Morrigan's message was very much like, basically she started out by saying, protect your peace. Protect your peace, because there can be some unexpected Hagalas disruption. I'm like, great. Sounds like a Fisher cat, looks like a fox cat combo almost. Yes, that's exactly what it looks like. Yeah, well, like I said, I will check in and I will report back tomorrow on what it turns out, if that matches what I'm seeing. Okay. So, like I said, I do my normal morning connections, and Azrael's message this morning was interesting. He seems to have a lot these days that I can convey to people, and I wrote it down because it was interesting. It was Ombrins Oananun Jachiska Ananael Giziax Ipam or Olani Momar Elfai Bzin, which translated into English means understand that the truth of the eyes is not secret wisdom. Okay, so that we're starting off already with a message, don't believe what you see. Now, I had some messages that have come in from people, and, just different, whether it be clients, friends, again, whatever, who I've been dealing with in the last few days. Everybody seems tense and kind of on edge. Somebody messaged me last night about that. Like everybody seems kind of tense and like if you go out, it's like people just seem very like, you know, impatient and so forth. So, and you know, to some degree, there may be some normalcy to that, but I think people are perceiving that there's this energy. Even when I have like left messages for people and I get replies, they're kind of very edgy replies sometimes from people. And I don't think they're meant to be edgy. I don't think they're trying to be that way. But I think that I said, yeah, there's people are like on edge, and it's because of what they're seeing. And so Azrael's kind of reiterating, don't believe what you see. And I think I said yesterday when I was looking at Steve Judd's March forecast, he said the same thing. Do not believe anything that you see or hear in March. It's a test month. Wait till you get to April. When you get to April, the whole picture is going to change, and we're going to be like, what the hell was all that for the last couple of months, last 2 or 3 months? It's going to be a completely different thing. So there's definitely a reiteration. And okay, so the second part of his message was the earthquakes are beginning. Now, he could be being literal. He could be being figurative. I said, is that literal or figurative? And he kind of went, yeah, both. Because there are earthquakes going on in different parts of the world. You have big earthquake swarms around like Greece and Italy and that place right now. And around, is it Santorini? I think that's the name of the island, where they had like 15,000. They recorded 15,000 types of seismic activity. And I don't even know how you have that much seismic activity. I don't know over what period of time. But it's feeling like there's a lot of volcanoes that seem like they're about to blow. So yeah, so we've had that. And earthquakes beginning. The sun will be crowned 2 times, first with the voices of the waters. Okay, so this is what he says. And, you know, Momar is crowned. So, okay, so I was thinking, all right, this has to do with the fact that we have all these planets that are packed. They're going to be packed in Pisces. Everything's moving into position where you're going to have like Saturn, Neptune, the North Node. You're going to have Venus. You're going to have Mercury. I don't think you're going to have Jupiter, and I don't think you're going to have Mars per se, but you're going to be having all these other planets just crammed into Pisces. And so the implication seems to be that that's going to be causing like this, what he's calling it be the earthquake. So when he says the sun is crowned 2 times, it's almost like the sun right now, I feel like is almost in, it's going to be, I don't know how else to say this. I feel like it's in fight mode. I don't know how to say that. Solar activity has been huge. I think a lot of the ways that we have been feeling during the month, I think at least one piece of that is the solar activity. And it doesn't matter whether you look at that spiritually or whether you look at that from a strictly geophysical, scientific perspective. When you have that much solar radiation and solar activity, solar winds like hitting the earth and magnetism hitting the earth, it can have an effect on your system. And there seems to be a lot of that's going on. But first with the voices of the waters. So what needs to come out from the 12th house? What needs to come out from Pisces? And then remember a lot of these planets, Neptune, Aries. Venus is actually in Aries right now, though she's retrograding into Pisces, but then she'll go direct back into Aries again. Then they're all going to be moving to Aries. So crowned 2 times. First time in water, second time is going to be in fire. So these are going to bring, I think, 2 very distinct kind of shifts. And again, they said, what's really going on here is not something that you can see with your eyes. Like what we're seeing in the news, the things that are happening, it's saying it's understandable. And of course, the people are directly affected by things. Brian says they're amped up right now is what Joanne said. Yeah, that's another, yeah, I know you watch his forecast on that kind of a thing. Yeah. And it's, everything is kind of amped up. And I think but this particular configuration is going to bring about major change, is what Azrael's saying. But he's saying hang tight, because what you see with the eyes is not what is actually happening. So, or he says what's going on in the background. There's going to be things that are perceived as limitations, or maybe literally are. I think about people right now who are just losing their jobs en masse for no real reason. They're just losing their jobs en masse because there's this, we've just decided that this department isn't worth anything, so we're firing everybody. There's a lot of that going on right now. And I know right now unemployment is at the highest it's been in years. here, at least in the USA. There's a lot of stuff going on, and then there's some stuff going on the international stage too. Again, I don't want to talk too much about that because, again, what we're seeing with our eyes is not necessarily what's going on. Perth keeps coming up, and it was Perth. I want to say it was Perth followed by, it was either Uruz or Hagalaz when I was doing with the runes, and that suggests to me that when the unknowable, there's basically going to be like a karmic blowback. Let's put it that way. I don't know how else to express it. I think that's something that people kind of relate to, but that what's happening right now is going to have kind of this. There's going to be like what's hidden right now is that a lot of this is happening, and again, we've talked about how some of this is like old, paying off of the old. A lot of times the South Node card will show up for me on that one. So it's like, well, we're getting rid of the old and getting ready to move into the new. And so a lot of this is happening, not because not because the aspects of what's happening is necessarily good, but like whatever is going on right now, it's a provoking force. It's a provoking force. It's going to bring the voices out of the depths. Okay, how people expressing how they feel, what they've kept hidden, what's coming up, and then with Aries, there's going to be like this action, this shift into action. So, and again, what that's going to look like, I don't know. It's basically it's shrouded in mystery. But all we've been told is what we're seeing with your eyes. It is so easy. Let me tell you, I have been trying to stay off like certain social media feeds, and I certainly don't watch the news and stuff like that at this point because I'm just like because I'm feeling like what we're seeing right now is if we sit there and watch that and say, okay, well, what is the future going to bring based on this? That I don't think we're going to get the right answer. So that's why I feel like there's this like, okay, and I think it's telling people protect yourself, protect your peace, protect your joy, and again, find your opportunities, find your way to play through this, really. Which again, I realize if people have had big losses lately, they're like, yeah, F you, like, you know, I don't feel like playing anything. But the idea is to say, okay, when you've had a loss, and again, we're not talking about losses of people and stuff like that, which I realize that's a whole other process of, of things. I'm not talking about that. And Alex said, this is good to hear. I've been feeling some guilt for not looking at it, but I just can't, you know. Yeah, no, same thing. And for me, it's kind of like what bleeds in around the edges. It's either what people tell me, or it's like I happen to be looking for something else, like, I don't know, on Instagram, and then I get a whole bunch of stuff about it. Or I post something to one of my social media feeds, and then all of a sudden this shows up, you know? So it's, yeah. But this has been being reiterated, and that was like a really clear message. Sometimes Azrael's messages can be a little obtuse, but that one was like I was like, okay. And I said, do you want me to share this? He said, yes, share this. So, yeah, so there's definitely, so it's kind of almost like you're on the roller coaster right now. Hang tight. At some point, the ride is going to end, and you know, whatever. And I said to him, I said, for people who are losing things right now, because I think the people really right now who may not listen to this message and take too kindly to it are people who have lost their jobs. People are being told that, you know, their identities are being erased, or they're being, you know, they're being kind of dismissed as, if you don't belong to the majority group, somehow you're just, you know, you don't really have any real skills. You've just been hired because you're, you know, because you're considered to be a minority, and we don't do that. I mean, that kind of stuff that's going on, plus a lot of stuff that's going on now with the whole Putin Ukraine thing, which is like, yeah, it's there's a lot that's going on that's very troubling. But again, it seems like the end result of this is not going to be evident from what you see. And with all this Piscean energy, yeah, there's definitely a sense that usually when I get the Pisces card, it's like you have to just surrender to what is. And I don't, by that, I don't mean, you know, if your rights are affected, not fighting for your rights. I don't mean things like that. I mean, we have to kind of just go with what's going on here. We don't want to make long-term decisions based on what's going on right now. I think that's the most important thing. Don't make long-term plans based on what's going on right now. I know people are doing a lot of things because, you know, they're afraid that, you know, by the end of the year, we're not going to have this and not going to have that. And it's like, don't start making those long-term plans those reactive long-term plans. Wait until you see where things are going to be by like the first week of April. And so that's the message that I keep continually getting. And so now that we're in March, I think this is why, you know, the message is becoming stronger. Like, okay, you know, it's going to be showtime. You know, January and February were kind of preparatory. And again, I'm not the only one saying this. There's a lot of astrologers who are saying exactly the same thing. And yeah, it's things are getting ready to ramp up. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about today was I feel like there's okay, one of the other things that has been coming up for me recently, and one of the things I like to use this live stream for, is to answer questions that people have. Sometimes people ask me things privately, and so I'm not going to bring up people's private communications. But then sometimes there's just a trend in things that I'm being asked about. And a lot of the things that I'm being asked about seem to be around the body physical symptoms and how, well, I wonder, Joanne says, wonder if that's why the Fool keeps popping up. Look before you leap. Yeah, well, actually, that's a good point, Joanne. I want to answer that before I go into this. That's an excellent point, because the Fool card can mean don't take foolish risks. And that could be an angle of this. The Fool also, though, means that this is a new beginning where you can go, hey, I can do what I want, because that seems to be the other aspect of this. We're being told there's going to be an opportunity here for people to really do what they want. And, you know, in this chaos, that somehow it's going to break people out of systemic cycles that maybe they've gotten comfortable in to some degree. And that, you know, a lot of times, if things are basically going along okay, you know, there'll be activism, there'll be different things that go on, but, you know, people are kind of like, yeah, things are basically fine. When things are basically not fine, then, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, right? We find new ways to do things. And so certainly we have to take care of ourselves in the moment. But the Fool may be saying this may be the time to consider that thing that you've said, oh, I'm not, you know, oh, I can't ever do this because, you know, I need to stay in my secure job that I'm going to retire to this date. It could be that, and even if the job is something that people love, there's something, if it's something that's meant for them, they'll get it back. If it's not, then it could be saying like, okay, the universe is pushing you in another direction. Okay. There's a lot of concern about that. But the other piece that people are concerned about that I was thinking about has to do with physical symptoms. And I don't know if Sam is on today or not, but she's somebody who I think, actually, she's the person I would mainly point people to her Substack and to her Instagram. I might even put it in the description here, just even if she's not on, because that's the kind of work that she does. What I'm about to talk about, I think, is the kind of work that she's really, that she's good at, that she knows a lot about. And that has to do with the way in which what's going on in our chart, or what's in our birth chart, is something that is that affects what our physical health is going to be. So we talk a lot when I when I read charts for people, and it's funny. Weirdly, I don't really have this cough until I actually start talking. I'm sorry. I'm just noticing I'm doing it, so it's kind of annoying. But that when we have certain physical symptoms, and especially when certain things pop up, we may have certain things in our chart that that represent those kinds of things, what kinds of issues we're going to have physically, which really, in a way, might be like, well, you know, I mean, it's if astrology can affect us, other areas of our life, why would it not affect our physicality and physical health? Now, sixth house is typically associated with health because it's Virgo, and Virgo is associated, among other things, with health, you know, staying in balance, exercise, clean eating, all that kind of stuff. It tends to be sixth house kind of stuff. But I was kind of going through the charts of myself and some people in my family. I got a call from my sister the other day, or a message from my sister, and I think she is now. My mother has osteoporosis and osteopenia. My mother's actually crumbling. I mean, she's got degenerative scoliosis. And see, my mother's upbringing, though, was very much, she lived very much at the poverty line, and they didn't have, like, she probably wasn't given milk regularly. She wasn't, you know, she didn't have anything to build up her calcium or her bones. And she's always been very, very frail. My sister, though, is not, you know, she's, I'm not really sure exactly who she takes after, because she's really tall. My sister's almost 6 foot, and the rest of us, even my dad, wasn't that tall. So she's very, very tall. But she seems to be Now she said she went for a scan 10 years ago and it was basically okay. And then now all of a sudden, it's not just that she's an osteopenia, that now it seems to be more significant. So I found myself looking at her chart because I'm thinking, okay, when we talk about things that are happening in the bones, that's usually connected to Saturn and Saturn energy. Saturn has to do with the bones. Oftentimes with the teeth is what they'll say, but it has to do with the bones. So I feel like the Saturn placement might show us where those kinds of aches and pains might be. I was looking at my chart. I said my Saturn's in the 12th house, and that has to do with the feet and the ankles. So it's kind of like, yeah, and my feet and ankles have been bad since I was born, because I had, you're born with the toes that are kind of turned in pigeon-toed, I think is what they used to call it. But and back in the 70s, what they, and probably earlier, they would put braces on your feet so that they would force your legs to go straight. They don't do that anymore, apparently, because they said naturally it will change on its own. But mine, I remember I had to wear those braces, and and I had to wear special shoes for years to try to straighten my feet out. And to this day, I am not somebody who can wear, I can wear a moderate heel. I can't, those people who wear heels like this, I'm like, yeah, no, I can't do that. So yeah, so for me, there's feet and ankles, but I've also noticed that my Chiron placement is in the 10th house. And I'm trying to remember what that has to do with the knees. The Chiron, okay, that has to do with the knees. Sometimes with the skin too. Now, skin problems I haven't had in years. I had skin problems when I was younger. At my age, I haven't had them really. I mean, not in any significant way. But I remember when I first quit my job, I blew my right knee out, and my right knee has not been right. Like if I sit there in an asana to do meditation or whatever, it's like I have to, some people in the room with me, I'm like, excuse me, and I go crack my knee out, and people just like, ew, that, yeah, and it does hurt, but it's almost like it keeps popping out, and that's where my Chiron is, my Chiron in Aries. Aries by itself has to do with the face and so forth. But I'm thinking about the sun and the influence of the sun, because but we often don't think about, we always think of the sun as being very beneficial, right? Something benefic that shines on us. But in Vedic astrology in particular, the sun is considered to be a malefic effect, potentially. It's not necessarily considered to be a good thing in the chart. A lot of them, they have to do with the dignity. Those of you who have tried charts with me, or maybe you've had them elsewhere, know that certain planets are exalted and some are debilitated. And what that means is that the planet may be in a house that does not have an energy that is harmonious with it. So for example, Mars in Cancer, that's not really an auspicious placement because Mars is a fire sign, and when it's in water, that kind of waters it down. You know what I mean? Actually in Vedic astrology, there's something known as Gandanta. And and that has to do with your sun sign. If you were born, okay, and the signs are different, by the way. Like I'm a Taurus in Western astrology, but I'm an Aries in Vedic astrology, by sun sign. Okay. Really, they don't even go by your sun sign. They go by your ascendant or by your moon sign. But they have, but if you have the, what is it? So if you're born at the beginning, like the beginning of Aries, I think is April 14th in Vedic astrology. And so therefore, if you were born like the 12th, the 13th of April, you are what is known as, maybe even a couple days before that, you are known as Gandanta, which means you are partially in you're like Pisces Aries. Okay. Water, fire, kind of like what we're just talking about now. And the Gandanta point can weaken the fire in your chart. So if you're between Cancer and Leo, Scorpio and Sagittarius, use the same thing. You're at a Gandanta point. But again, it would be the Vedic version of that, not the way that we conceive of it. And I am going to, by the way, I do have an astrology class posted, I think for March 15th, because the ISFM class is not going to be till later. It's not going to be till like 3 o'clock. So I said, okay, I have some time in the morning to run this class for people because people have been asking for it. But yeah, so when something is not in dignity, it means that whatever energy or planet rules the house that planet sits in, that they're not exactly friendly to each other, and that's when they're debilitated. And those are the places that you want to look to for certain physical symptoms, because a lot of times they can tell you. Your Lilith placement can also tell you where you might have physical symptoms as well. So because these are the parts that rebel. But it seems to me people have been experiencing a lot of physical symptoms lately. So I think it's almost like worth looking at the chart to see where, what your current transits are, and to say, okay, you're looking at obviously at the natal chart, but then if you look at it with respect to transits, it's kind of like, okay, what is happening here? Where, what is, if something, for example, if somebody is having their Saturn transit, I think my sister is having her Saturn transit right now, and now her bones are a problem, right? I also noticed that her Chiron, though, is in the 9th house, which has to do with the hips, the thighs. It can also have to do with the liver, the nervous system, things like that. There are charts that talk about what organs connect to the body. But as I said, the person who's a real expert in that is Sam. So I often direct people to her if they want to make a full evaluation of that and what kind of nutrients are good and so forth, so on and so forth, for astrological conditions. So yeah, so I'm just going to mention her in that. But it did occur to me that, we are talking about a lot of what's going on with the solar winds and the excessive solar radiation, excessive sun activity, how that might be affecting us in terms of additional ultraviolet light in the spectrum and so forth. And so, so I feel like it's, yeah, so we've got all of this kind of energy coming in, but I think also with a lot of these planetary shakeups, in addition to what may be shaken up for us culturally or socially, or even in our own individual psyches, there's a lot around with Aries energy about to become activated. Another thing I'm seeing a lot in the tarot readings I'm doing is that our identities are being changed, like that we don't know who we are anymore. It's like we're trying to figure out who we are. Alex says, cannot recommend Sam's work enough. She really helped me with a lot of difficulties that I have. Yes, thank you. Yes, and I know you have worked with Sam. She's great. And well, she and I kind of, well, we have our other things that we chat about that are, we have some similarities to our spiritual track that we discuss with each other. But she is, and oh, hello. So yeah, but I would definitely recommend her. She's really great. And I know she's finishing up some kind of schooling like in the next month or so, but yeah, she's definitely versed in the herbal aspects of astrology and how that affects the physical body. And I think because I was talking to her about that the other day because of some things that like my mom's going through and that my sister's going through, but I'm also hearing it from people saying, oh, this is suddenly happening to me and that, and some of it's normal life change stuff, Kathleen says, please share Sam's info. Looking at my chart and I'm blown away with what you just said. Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely. I will share it. I'll put it in when this video is done, I'll go back to YouTube and pop it in the description. I actually should be keeping up with the descriptions on this on YouTube, and I don't. I should put like a title on each of these so people know what the theme is. If they're like, it's like, Brigid's random live stream from this date. So yes, and also Kathleen, I know I'm going to see you today too, so I can share that with you as well. But yeah, I would like to see her. She's somebody who I'd like to see get some more business for what she does, because she really is very knowledgeable about that. So yeah, so there's, like I said, I'm kind of a dabbler, and I think she's much more versed. I mean, I would say I have an intermediate knowledge of astrology. There's some people who have been doing it for years and years and years and years who I consider to be experts. I've picked up a lot along the way, and I know some of the more esoteric aspects of astrology. Interesting. Thanks for the insight on the physical aspect. Oh, sure. Absolutely. And hello, Suda. I didn't see you on here. So yeah, so I'm going to flip some cards here. And I'm going to use the astrology cards right now because we're in this astrological shift. So I want to see what it's telling me. I'm just going soon. Yes. Okay. So we've got our 5 cards, our 5 astrology cards today. And our first card is, interestingly, Saturn return. Okay. Now, what does Saturn return have to do with? Okay, Saturn return. Well, okay, by the guidebook in the system, Saturn return is about, shattering of illusions. Okay, it's one that shatters illusions. Saturn is the one that, even though Saturn doesn't necessarily have an earthy association, but Saturn is the one who, when we have all these great plans, Saturn goes, okay, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And we feel like Saturn can sometimes pour cold water on things. But Saturn's not really meant to do that. Saturn is really there to teach us, you know, Saturn has a lot to do, as I said, with agriculture and with growing. And oftentimes, at least in when we think about Ovid and Hesiod and some of the myths, has to do with the Golden Age. We forget that the Elysian Fields, which in ancient Greek afterlife, the Elysian Fields was, and in Roman afterlife too, that was the place that was like most like being back on Earth. It was like a very beautiful and pleasant place all the time, and you know, people were feasting and having a good time. Like, in other words, your life after death was kind of nice. Some people equate it with heaven, but it's not quite the same thing. Probably because the idea of heaven is something entirely different. But the idea is this is where the heroes would go. It was the place where you could go rest and have that nice, peaceful life. Oh, cool, refreshing water, right? Yeah, that cool, refreshing water that dumps over you, right? Yeah, so you have this, and Saturn is the one who rules over the Elysian Fields, interestingly enough. Interesting because I'm also thinking about Saturn as the night sun. And if you're thinking about the underworld as a place of, it's dark because it's either under the earth or under the water, that Saturn is the sun that rules that. You know, you actually see something similar in certain Hindu ideas about the underworld as well. The realm of the realms underneath the earth that are ruled by the Nagas, which are the serpent kings. And there's so many jewels there that they say it's actually brighter in the underworld than it is from our sun in the upper world. So like kind of that illumination that comes from that bright light and that illumination that comes from within is what Saturn seems to represent here. And this is calling age. So, you know, maybe it's saying, yeah, maybe we're all getting old, right? But remember what I said about Saturn in the bones, right? There's something, Saturn right now, I don't think it's considered to be conjunct Mercury, but it's really in the same part of the sky right now. Is it him or Uranus that's the great eliminator? I can never remember. Well, if you're talking about the mythology, Uranus was the sky god, and Saturn is, Saturn has his sickle and or the scythe. He's a reaper, right? So he is associated with reaping, and so thus he can sometimes be associated with death. Like yesterday I was talking about the Sephirah of Da'at, which is the abyss that you can fall into. Whereas Uranus is more of like a sky king, or like the first sky king, but the one who was really inimical to life on Earth. Like, wanted to push everything under the surface, interestingly enough, which is what caused him to be Kronos, actually to cause his son Kronos to, dismember his member. So, which caused him to retreat. But Uranus energy in terms of planetary, yeah, that's, again, it depends on where you're going. Probably both of them are a disruptive force, but Saturn is the one that's trying to make you, Saturn's really trying to discipline you into, doing it right. Like if you're going out there and you wanna, I'm being metaphorical here in a way, but it could be literal as well. You're out there to plant your garden. Oftentimes we look at pictures of gardens and we think, oh, that's really nice. I want to have, all these flowers and everything. But there's a certain amount of work involved in getting it to plant things and to get it to look that way and to stay that way, right? So Saturn's like the one who's like the master gardener, like telling you, okay, this is how you have to do it. And there's some labor involved, right? Break up the soil, and then you've got to move things, and then you have to, dig things up and put things in. There's a process that's involved. So I feel like when we have the Saturn return, we have this Saturn return periodically in our chart. In Vedic astrology, it's called the Saraswati. And, sometimes, and again, various people whose charts I've looked at recently, some people are entering it, some people are just exiting it. So if they've had like a doozy of the last few years, it's like, yep, you've had your Saturn return. Usually it happens. I was born into Saturn Dasha when I was young, and also people who are moving into their Saturn phase or Dasha can also find that they're experiencing challenges, because it's not so much it's challenging your dreams and telling you can't have them. It's more challenging you to find the way to get there. It's like, I want to get to the top of the mountain. So what's the route that I need to take to climb? There may not be any shortcuts, right? So Saturn is kind of this reminder of karma, because Saturn is often considered to be the lord of karma, given his connection to time. So this is where we're starting. And we're starting in with the water element, okay? The water element, Pisces, right? Saturn is in Pisces right now and is going to move into Aries. But yeah, so it's kind of like when we're in this watery space, the challenge here is trying to figure out what's real, what's sustainable, what is, among the obstacles, what's the real path forward here? Or what are the opportunities? Because again, Saturn ultimately is connected with abundance. So how do we make use of that energy in the right way? We've just come out of Pluto and Capricorn. But Capricorn energy, again, can be very productive, very, it can be the thing that makes us persist, where we get into our disciplined routines of doing things. But remember, we're breaking up a lot of routines right now. So the question is, okay, what aspects of your routine, do you need to let go of? What aspects of your identity do you need to let go of? What is breaking down here in terms of our, and again, with Venus retrograde starting today, what do you value? What gives you pleasure? You have to review all of that, right? This is all coming into review. Now, what we're not seeing, interestingly, is the North Node, okay? Now, the North Node, again, when we're thinking about it in terms of divination, the North Node has to do with where we're headed. Where's our future? So in other words, things are being, like the stage is being set for whatever the future is going to be, whatever the next game is. It's almost like we're in an intermission or something, right? And the stage set is changing, but we don't know yet how it's going to change. Maybe we had some things that make us feel like, ooh, this is a bad foreshadowing of where it's going to go. and in previous act, some not very good things are happening. But now it's almost like we're in that intermission phase where we're going to see what the new stage set is. So what it's advising us to do here is we have the earth element here, which is stability. Earth element is, again, kind of like what Azrael says. It's like, don't believe what your eyes are seeing necessarily. Stay grounded, stay focused on what you're doing, stay focused on your day-to-day, and have some patience. We're trying to figure out where our footing is right now. And it's like, just focus on the footing that you have. If everything goes, if you have no footing whatsoever, then you want to think about, okay, what do I need to do to rebuild? It's like people who go through tornadoes, right? Their whole house is blown away. It's like, okay, so now we've got to rebuild. What's the foundation? Do we rebuild in the same place? Do we do something different, right? So all of these things, but for right now, it just seems to be saying, just stick with the day-to-day, stay, Earth to me is about staying focused, staying practical, but also given that Earth is connected to things like, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, what we're saying, this could also indicate that our stability may be being disrupted because we may be being challenged to think differently about what does create stability for us. What do we value? Again, there's this idea that needs to be the focus this month. What gives us stability? What are we relying on? And how might that change? And then the outcome here is Leo. Okay. And it's interesting. We're moving from water to fire, kind of like what he said, although we're not moving into Leo season. But Leo has to do with, well, remember, Leo is strength. Remember I said the other day there was something about the 4th and 5th houses. Leo is the 5th house. Okay. And so that has to do with being creative. That has to do with what does give us pleasure. Okay. Leo is really a card of happiness. In the 5th house is about, what is your pleasure? That's why it's connected with love affairs. That's why it's connected with children. That's why it's connected with your creative output. And the thing is, I think when we use the phrase creative output, everyone thinks like, oh, well, now I have to become an artist, or now I have to, I don't know, I have to learn to sing, or I have to write a book. And it doesn't necessarily have to be any of those things. Our creativity is expressed in different ways. Leo, I win. That's what Suda said. Well, hopefully, right? But the Leo energy is, oh, sorry. You're asking what it says. It says, I will. I will. This is what, in other words, I will something. You could look at it as a future tense. I will do this, or will in the sense of I do my will. Sounds very Thelemic, right? But I do my will. I'm going to be this is the thing that I do. So I feel like, with the Leo energy, it's going to be, and Leo energy is also very sun oriented. So it's about what we're recognized for. What is our light that makes us shine? And as I've said to a number of people who I've, again, if I feel like this is something I've said a lot in the last few weeks, but the question, I think it does go back to the question of where is your joy? That's where we're actually looking at things. So if I have somebody who says to me like, well, yeah, I'm in business. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Oh, I'm in business and, but my business isn't doing well. So I don't know, maybe I should go back and get a regular job. And I have heard this, by the way, from multiple people. And so I will say to them, well, okay, tell me about your regular job. And when they talk about their, whatever it is that they're doing now, their face just lights up and they're like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And I'm like, there's your joy. There's your joy. Whatever makes you feel alive. Like if you're feeling like crap during the day, but doing the thing makes you feel so much better, that's where your joy is. So we want to look to find where is our joy and how do we build that into our stability? Okay. A lot of times we feel like, oh no, well, I can't do that. The thing I really enjoy doing, I can never make money at that. I can never do this. These are the kinds of things that are being challenged right now. So, and again, I feel like a broken record to some degree. I'm sure you've all heard this from me and you're all like, yeah, okay, Brigid, how many times have you said that? But at the same time, it's like, but this is something that it's telling us like, no, look at this again. Look at this again. Where is our happiness? What makes us feel alive? And it's not even just temporal things. Like we could say, oh, well, having a new car makes me happy, or having a nice pair of shoes makes me happy. It's not talking about that kind of stuff. What makes us, what is the thing? Because think about it, you get that kind of a thing. And then like a week later, it doesn't make you as happy as it did the day you got it, right? Where does your joy really lie? And I think that's the question that we're being asked. But again, remember, I think the big message of today was understand that the truth of the eyes are not the secret wisdom, and NIL. I feel like that is like the most important message. And we are being kind of told like, hang on tight, the roller coaster may be making this big, thing, but, just stay focused. Because I also think a lot of what's going on energetically is not only having us question it, but is also there's also a lot of distractions right now, a lot of things that are going to make us lose focus. And everybody's on edge right now. There's a lot of people on edge, at least. I mean, maybe you are or not, but certainly that may be noticed. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the energy here. And even if people don't care about the astrology or any of this at all, certainly just things that may be going on that affect livelihoods, retirements, things like that, or just even stuff going on the international stage that people care about. Everybody is just like, so just be aware of that. And again, if we're coming at it with an open heart, then you want to have compassion for the fact that, yes, people are going through things right now and they may not behave in the ways that, we would think are proper right now. But also understand that this is the way that they're trying to negotiate. And being that this is something so new for people, some people are like, I don't even know how to negotiate this. So big transitions here. So, coming from somebody calling her business transition life coaching. This seems to be what's being said right now is just focus on one day at a time. Just focus on what you need. Don't give yourself a huge diet of social media and stuff like that. Just try to stay focused on where you are. Take the challenges one day at a time. And again, reassess your attitudes towards money, stability, or what your narratives are around that. Okay. I find it interesting, I guess, and I don't want to derail into this. This is my last thought, but some people were saying, and again, I haven't been really listening to it, that Elon Musk was sending emails to people like, justify to me, what you did in the last week or how productive you've been. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? Productive to who? And beneficial to who? Like, what do you mean by productive? And people were giving kind of a lot of, I guess, nasty blowback to that particular question. But I just think it's an interesting statement to make in the view of the fact that this Capricornian idea, a Capricornian idea in a negative sense of produce, like you're a machine that's just meant to produce. We're kind of seeing that that's part of the narrative. Okay. So anyway, just some things to think about. Hope you guys have a great Saturday. I will see some of you later in the dream workshop, which I'm looking forward to very much today. And and I've recorded a new podcast. So Katonia fans, there's going to be one coming out on Nemesis on Monday. So I hope you will enjoy that. Have a great rest of your